So, Sophie posted this video of her in red having a moment on the court.
Think you're someone new.
That moment right there changes everything. Sophie Cunningham drops a throwback photo in fever red, and Caitlin Clark fires back with 3 simple words. It's time to run it back. Straightforward enough. But then Sophie comes back with this. Only if you cuddle and make me dinner twice a week. Now, before we dive into what this really signals for the Fever's roster moves, we've got to break down why this casual back and forth has turned into a make-or-break business call for Indiana's management. Because there's a whole situation brewing in the background that could see the Fever lose one of their key pieces. And it's got nothing to do with performance between the lines.
Right? Been a while since we just talked straight Fever action, but free agency is leaving a lot of questions. Kelsey Mitchell, Sophie Cunningham, Chloe Bibby probably won't be on this team, although I wish we could figure out how to get Red back on the team. Yeah, I would appreciate that. As always, make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you check to see if you're still subscribed. YouTube is still unsubscribing.
Free agency sits completely locked up. The CBA talks have stretched into month 2 with 0 breakthrough. We're looking at 50 to 54 games next season, jumping up from 44 this past year. But here's the piece everyone's missing. The expansion draft mechanics are crystal clear. Indiana's got to shield their cornerstone players from Portland and Toronto. Standard protection in most expansion scenarios covers 5, maybe 6 players max. That's the limit. Clark, Boston, Hall, Smith are automatic locks. 4 slots down, leaving the Fever with just 1, possibly 2 protection spots for the rest of their roster. This is where things get messy, because both Kelsey Mitchell and Sophie Cunningham are unrestricted free agents who've gone public about wanting to stay with this team.
Many Indiana Fever fans want nothing more than for their team to bring Sophie Cunningham back in free agency this winter, whenever the WNBA league office and its players agree to a new CBA. Of course, Cunningham isn't the only member of the Indiana 2025 team that fans are clamoring to bring back, as Kelsey Mitchell is just as beloved among the fan base.
Let's tackle the obvious first. That comment section under their Instagram exchange turned into exactly the circus you'd predict from certain WNBA social media corners. Someone literally dropped this question: has Caitlin Clark ever cheated on her boyfriend Connor? All because 2 teammates were joking around. This captures the reality of following this league perfectly. 2 players can't even have normal, friendly conversation without part of the fan base spinning up some wild storyline that has 0 connection to basketball. Caitlin Clark has a solid, committed relationship. Sophie Cunningham is straight. They're friends and former teammates having fun on social media. End of story. Let's move forward.
Sophie's trying to scrap. And for some of us, we appreciate that. Where was the rest of y'all? And yeah, y'all all going to keep getting called out until you show that fire. The good news is Indiana doesn't necessarily have to choose when it comes to getting Cunningham or Mitchell. Both players have expressed interest in returning. The Fever's front office will have enough money and flexibility to re-sign them, both if they so desire. Well, here's the problem, and I'm not sure they even...
Now, here's what actually impacts roster building. Sophie Cunningham ranked as the 2nd most Googled female athlete in America throughout 2024, based on Google's year-end numbers, not 2nd in the WNBA specifically, 2nd across every female athlete in the entire nation. She's running a podcast through the Volume Network. She appears on major media shows consistently. She's cultivated a real fan base that goes way past basketball. And here's the key detail. She spent just 1 season with the Fever. Think about that timeline. 12 months in Indiana, and she climbed to 2nd most searched female athlete in America. That's not purely about her charisma. That's about the massive platform that comes with playing next to Caitlin Clark.
But they have to protect her. If they leave her out there to be drafted, just from a pure marketing and business standpoint, if you're a new franchise, you draft her first thing. Because she's one of the few players in this league that's got a fan base. That's all there is to it. Has her own high-profile podcast on the Volume. And she's in on marketing opportunities.
But there's another element that never appears in marketing analysis or Google search statistics. Go back and study the footage from last season. When Caitlin Clark took hits, when she got knocked around, when opponents were throwing cheap shots at the league's biggest attraction, who was the only Fever player consistently stepping up physically? Sophie Cunningham. She was the sole teammate who would actually get confrontational and back up Clark on the floor. Not just discuss it during post-game media sessions, actually handle it in real time. That carries weight in ways that never show up on any stat sheet. Team chemistry, locker room dynamics, the readiness to protect your star player when situations turn physical. The Fever had teammates who posted better numbers than Cunningham, but they didn't have anyone else delivering that particular element.
Scroll down, and here is this. Has Caitlin Clark ever cheated on her boyfriend Connor? Guys, I'm not justifying hitting that. Wow. Even the fans, I mean, we found this out. The fans of this league, God, they're ate up with agenda. Always got to make something, of course. You see that. They want to make this into a Sophie and Caitlin. They're clowning around with each other.
So, let's map out the expansion draft situation, because this is where the Fever management has to calculate some serious risk. If Indiana brings back both Kelsey Mitchell and Sophie Cunningham before the expansion draft, they're forced to protect both players. That burns through 2 of their 5 or 6 protection opportunities. But consider the flip side. If they leave Sophie unprotected, assuming they can't or won't shield her, what's the outcome? Portland and Toronto are constructing franchises from zero. They need players who can move tickets and create media buzz right away. Sophie Cunningham hits both targets. She's a solid rotation contributor who delivers real star power and marketing appeal. If she's sitting there in that expansion draft, she's getting picked up. Guaranteed first round, maybe even first selection overall.
I will be very disappointed if Sophie Cunningham is not on this team. I can tell you that right now. I can't remember exactly how many they can protect. I think it's 6. It's 5 or 6. So, Rhodes, you're supposed to know that, really? I mean, no. I've made videos on it. I think it's 5 or 6, but I'm not going to look it up because I just brought it up impromptu. Tell me what you think. Sophie and Caitlin, I feel like have to run it back.
Here's what makes this especially critical for the Fever's planning process. This isn't simply about whether Sophie Cunningham outperforms whoever else they might leave exposed. This is about grasping the business fundamentals of expansion drafts. New franchises need recognizable faces. They need players who can spark immediate fan excitement and media attention. They need someone who can hit local radio and podcasts and actually pull an audience. Portland and Toronto are joining a league where Caitlin Clark just shattered attendance records and TV ratings. They're entering a landscape where star power and media footprint matter more than ever in WNBA history. Sophie Cunningham represents exactly the kind of asset expansion teams hunt for. The Fever have to balance that against their court requirements. Kelsey Mitchell dropped 17 points per game last season and has been their most reliable scorer for years running. She's the top priority. But if Indiana can only shield one of their unrestricted free agents, the basketball choice and the business choice might split in opposite directions. Mitchell brings superior play. Cunningham might represent the bigger loss if she lands in Portland or Toronto, because she contributes elements that are tougher to replace through free agency or the draft. And then there's the Caitlin Clark variable. That Instagram interaction wasn't just casual conversation. It was a public message. Clark wants Sophie back. She's made that obvious. Franchise player preferences carry weight. When your generational talent tells you she wants a specific teammate returned, you listen. Not just to keep your star satisfied, but because she's recognizing something about team chemistry and compatibility that might not be clear from outside observation. Examine Sophie's influence beyond statistics last season. The Fever transformed from a broken lottery team into a playoff squad. Part of that was Clark's entrance. Part came from Aaliyah Boston's growth, but part also involved adding veterans like Cunningham, who grasped how to function alongside a ball-heavy guard without needing spotlight attention. She absorbed contact. She knocked down open threes. She defended with intensity. She brought energy off the bench. Those represent exactly the traits you want surrounding a young star. The schedule matters here too. Free agency stays frozen until the CBA gets finalized. CBA talks remain stuck over revenue sharing and salary cap framework. Nobody knows when resolution comes. Could be next week, could be next month. But whenever it happens, there's going to be a rushed free agency window, followed immediately by expansion draft prep. The Fever can't afford to wait and watch how the market unfolds. They need quick decisions about who they're emphasizing and who they're prepared to risk losing. Here's another dimension that gets overlooked. What happens if Sophie moves to Portland or Toronto and develops into a legitimate star independently? She's 28 years old, hitting her peak with proven ability to drive media attention and fan connection. Place her in a featured position on an expansion team building identity from scratch, and she could absolutely emerge. Maybe not as a first-team all-WNBA selection, but as a fan favorite who moves merchandise and drives attendance. That holds real value. And if the Fever let her leave for nothing, or worse, lose her in the expansion draft because they didn't protect her, that's a wasted opportunity that could sting for years. The opposing argument is simple. The Fever can't construct their roster around feelings and social media buzz. They need to focus on winning games. Kelsey Mitchell scores better. Lexi Hall demonstrated real progress last season. Katie Lou Samuelson can shoot effectively. Erica Wheeler provides veteran guidance. If protecting Sophie means exposing one of those players, maybe that's not the correct choice. Basketball decisions should stem from basketball worth, not Instagram engagement and podcast numbers. But here's the reality about modern pro sports. The separation between basketball value and entertainment value is thinner than it's ever been. The WNBA just locked in a television package worth $200 million annually, up from $50 million. That jump wasn't powered by competitive parity or playoff excitement. It was fueled by Caitlin Clark, creating record viewership and unprecedented mainstream coverage. The league finally got compensated based on entertainment appeal, not just basketball excellence. In that climate, a player like Sophie Cunningham, who brings authentic media presence and fan engagement, holds more worth than traditional analysis indicates. So where does this put the Fever? They're confronting a choice every front office despises, selecting between solid options with no obvious correct answer. Sign both Mitchell and Cunningham. Protect them both and risk losing someone else valuable in the expansion. Focus on Mitchell, let Sophie explore free agency, and hope she either returns or doesn't get claimed by Portland or Toronto. Or make the bold move and secure Sophie specifically because of her off-court worth and her connection with Clark. Even if that means making a tough choice elsewhere on the roster, what we know without question is this. Caitlin Clark wants Sophie Cunningham back. The fan base wants Sophie returned. Sophie wants to stay. The question becomes whether management values what she contributes enough to make it work. And if they don't, if they let her go or leave her unprotected and she winds up in Portland or Toronto, they better be correct about whoever they picked instead. Because if Sophie Cunningham becomes a crowd favorite in another city while the Fever are explaining why they didn't retain her, that's a PR disaster that lingers for years. The CBA will eventually get resolved. Free agency will launch. The expansion draft will occur. And when it does, we're going to discover exactly how the Indiana Fever weighs the mix of court production, off-court appeal, team chemistry, and franchise player input. Sophie Cunningham embodies all four elements. Smart money suggests they figure out how to keep her. But in a league where business choices don't always match common logic, Nothing's certain until ink hits paper.